This is Dennis Balcom, and he's been a missionary in China for the last 40 years. He obviously has some exciting stories to tell, but he actually offered me something far more valuable. He supplied me with a treasure trove of footage from deep in the heart of the underground church in China. What you are about to see is some of the rarest footage on the planet. In this church, the people wake up at 4:30 to come together for 2 hours to pray and worship. They do this every day. This church meets in the only place they're safe, a cave. This church meets on a farm, far away from prying eyes. Here's an example of an underground church outreach. The people sitting are Christians. The people who are standing are not. This particular preacher was once crippled, but was healed when someone prayed for her. She now preaches the good news of Jesus to anyone who will listen. In this particular meeting, over 1,000 people became Christians. This is a church service attended by over 6,000 people, and while that may sound like a lot, you have to understand, this one church has over 300,000 members. This is often how churches operate in China. They start by getting everyone's attention using drama or music. Then they pray for the sick. This has become common practice in the Chinese church, and for good reason. As Dennis put it,
I've seen AIDS patients completely delivered recently, a lot of different healings, and the healings and the miracles are one reason that many people come to the Lord.
Here Christians cast out demons from an 18-year-old girl. She's now a preacher. In Shanghai alone, there are over 3,000 house churches, just like this one. One thing Dennis pointed out to me was that most of the underground churches in China are actually led by young people. These kids have all come out of the communist system, and they want nothing to do with it. They only want to spread the love of Jesus to everybody they meet. This is a music school. Well, that's the cover anyway. It's really a training school for students who want to be pastors. The government thinks they're simply learning to play instruments. One thing I quickly realized about the Chinese church is that it's a lot different from the American one. For one thing, they think a 4-hour sermon is short. But more than that, even, is how different their services looked from ours. I mean, see for yourself what happens when a desperate people plug into a powerful God. This is a Sunday school class. What's the big deal about that, you ask? Well, none of these kids' parents are Christians. They send their kids here so they will learn to be good children. Nearly all of these children will eventually lead their parents to the Lord. In this church service, it's 120 degrees inside the building. The people meet for 12 hours straight. Dennis told me one story about a time he went to a very remote village in China to preach. He was led into a large room where the people were packed so closely together that he had his back to the wall and could reach out and touch the row in front of him. Everyone stood. There was no room to sit. He asked how long he should preach for, and they told him from 8:30 to 7 at night. Then they asked him if it wasn't too much trouble, could you come back tomorrow and preach from 8:30 to 7 again? And then, very sheepishly, they asked again, if you'd be so kind, could you come back the day after that and preach from 8:30 to 7? He asked how often he should take breaks, and they told him not to stop. The people will wait. Then he asked them what he should preach on. Everything, they replied, from Genesis to Revelation. And then it dawned on him, these people had no Bibles.
Well, very common is miracles of healing, like anywhere in church history, but it's not particularly in church services like we have healing conferences. It's when they're out evangelizing. There's miracles of divine guidance. There's miracles of nature. Like an example, there's a field where all of the crops are dry except for the Christian field. And their field has beautiful crops, and they say when it rained, the rain came on their field. And in times of flood, the Lord would protect the villages of the Christians when all the other villages were destroyed. And I think if the Western church would stand up and really preach the gospel, not get involved in, about abortion and gay rights and these, just preach Jesus Christ. The devil doesn't want to hear Jesus Christ preach. And that's what, they're not on any social issue. They don't even talk about the government. They might pray for the government. We don't have this thing about, the nation is going to be converted, the government's going to be converted. They simply preach the gospel. And persecution comes when you really preach the gospel and tell people to repent and turn to the Lord. And I think that it's the persecution and the suffering that has really made the church strong.